company, which will suggest eco-friendly solutions that can boost the development of the global society.
In our headlines on this Friday, May 30th, here in South Korea. 2 days of early voting to pick the next president are poised to end at 6 in the evening today as candidates continue their engagement with voters ahead of Election Day on June 3rd. On the economic front, all three major indicators, including industrial output, retail sales, and facility investment, fell on month in April amid U.S. tariffs and sluggish domestic consumption. Meanwhile, over in the U.S., 1 day after a trade court ruled against the Trump administration's reciprocal tariffs, an appeals court says the U.S. can continue collecting import duties for now. We start with election news. In less than 1 hour, the 2-day early voting period comes to a close, and my colleague An Sung-jin joins me now from a polling place here in capital Seoul. Sung-jin, it's great to have you on. So what's the mood there like today?
Great to be here, Sunny. I'm currently standing in front of an early voting location in Yeoksamdong, Gangnam-gu district. It's a bustling area with a lot of office workers, as you can probably see from behind me. I was out here since early in the morning, and we saw an influx of voters coming in early to vote before they head into work. Yesterday saw the highest voter turnout rate in early voting, which first took place in 2014 for national elections. This morning, it was relatively calmer when we first got here, but towards the afternoon, the line has been getting longer. This afternoon, we're trying to see, as we head towards the end of early voting, that the line is extending beyond the front of the polling station. Have a listen to what some of the voters have had to say.
People nowadays say how living conditions are difficult, so I hope that the economy can be revitalized and that whichever candidate wins, they actually follow through with their election promises.
I came here with my son to explain about how elections work and that this many people are interested in voting.
So, Sung-jin, as you mentioned earlier, the first day of early voting saw a record voter turnout. What can we expect today? And do you have any words for those planning to rush to polling stations within the next 1 hour?
Well, the two-day early voting is about to end in about an hour, but for those who wish to cast a ballot, they should be over 18 and bring a government-issued ID. Now, if you take a closer look at the voter turnout rate as of 4 p.m. this afternoon, it was standing at 31.38%. Jeollanam-do province recorded the highest turnout rate at 52.45%, while Daegu the lowest at 22.84%. Turnout in previous early voting in 2017 was 26.1%, while in 2022 it was 36.9%, a record high figure. Now, although we did see an increase in 2022, with voting taking place on a weekday unlike previously, we may see a lower number. Some say that with much interest coming from a snap presidential election, more voters may come out to vote. Now, as we just passed 5 p.m., new figures should be out, and I will be back for our later newscast with the final numbers. Back to you, Sunny.
All right then, Sung-jin, thank you for that report. That was our Sung-jin with the latest on early voting that ends within 1 hour. Now, with election day slated for next Tuesday, campaigning continues with contenders here out on the streets to share their vision for South Korea. That being said, our political correspondent Shin Ha-young is standing by at a rally of Liberal Party contender Lee Jae-myung, who is speaking to supporters in Gangwon-do province. Ha-young, welcome back. So it's the last day of early voting and we have 4 days left before the actual election day. What has Lee Jae-myung been saying?
Sunny, as you've mentioned, today is the final day of early voting, and the Democratic Party is giving it their all until the end. And as you can see behind me, DP candidate Lee Jae-myung is on stage delivering a speech here in the city of Wonju, Gangwon-do province. And this is Lee Jae-myung's first visit to the province during the official campaign period. And the DP describes Wonju as an innovation city, home to public bio and medical institutions. And as part of today's campaign, he is expected to share plans to grow the AI healthcare industry, expand bio research and development, and boost Wonju's future industry competitiveness. And ahead of his visit here, he also stopped in the city of Chuncheon on the same province. Take a listen.
Real freedom comes from a fair and equal society. We need to make sure everyone has a fair chance by removing unfair barriers and creating a level playing field. Freedom doesn't mean being free to starve. That's not true freedom.
Meanwhile, Ha-young, organizers say the first day of early voting saw a record number of voters. What has been the response to this reality from the Liberal Party?
Well, Sunny, regarding yesterday's record high turnout for the early voting, the DP said it was a clear reminder of that votes are more stronger, powerful than bullets. And the party attributed the high turnout to the public's strong desire to end the insurrection fallout and also put the country back on track. Take a listen to what the party's presidential election committee had to say.
In the 2022 presidential election, early voting turnout hit a record high of 36.9%. Let's break that record again today. By taking part in early voting, you can help end the insurrection, restore livelihoods, and bring the country back together.
The party said that it will stay humble and focus on the people's wish for a change in the government. That's all for this hour. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Ha-young, thank you for now, and do keep us updated with the latest from the Liberal camp. Up next, we touch base with the latest at the Conservative camp, whose contender Moon-soo is also campaigning in Gangwon-do province. My colleague Kim Do-yeon is there as well and joins me now. Do-yeon, it's great to have you on. So essentially, Kim and Lee are both in the same region today, Do-yeon.
That's right, Sunny. As you said, I'm also here in Wonju, around 20-minute drive from where Ha-young is actually, and Kim is set to appear on the stage behind me in any moment now. Now, his last-minute strategy is to meet as many citizens as possible. And in fact, he says he's not even going home until the official election campaign period ends. Now, to kick this long journey off, he had a long and emotional appeal to the voters. Here's a part of it. Take a listen.
The People Power Party has had many shortcomings. I deeply reflect on and sincerely apologize for having disappointed the people. We deserve the criticism and we will reflect on it deeply. We will not shy away from self-sacrifice, making tough decisions for the greater good, and pursuing policy innovation.
Now, for this first day of 90 hours of not going home, Kim rallied in Gyeonggi-do province and Chungcheongbuk-do province before coming here. With the voters already casting their ballots, he's not trying to put in new messages against his rival, but at his rally, he's been reiterating that Lee Jae-myung has too many legal risks and that DP will have too much power if it wins the presidency as well. To add to the efforts, though, Kim has also been appearing on stage with some well-known liberal politicians such as Hon Hak-kyu and Chun Byung-won, who formed their own factions as anti-Lee Jae-myung.
Meanwhile, Toyon, I asked this next question to Hayoung as well. What has been the Conservative Party's reaction to news that the first day of early voting registered a record number of voters?
Right, Sunny, of course, the People Power Party will try to take the credit, and to add to their message, they're saying that with the high voter turnout, the things are turning around at this point in the election. Take a listen to what they have to say.
I believe this high voter turnout reflects the people's strong and resolute will to stop a monstrous dictatorship. We are moving toward a miraculous comeback.
Now, Sonny, as for the second day of his journey, Kim is set to tour around this province a bit more and head down to Gyeongsang-buk-do for rallies over the weekend. The Gyeongsang-buk-do region, including Daegu, as you heard from Seongjin, is a region that has not participated in early voting as much as others. Having said that, it also means that many votes are up for grabs still in this conservative stronghold. So Kim's decision to go there on Saturday after early voting closes could be a strategy. That's all for now. Back to you, Sonny.
All right, Toyon, thank you for that coverage of the Conservative camp, and do keep us posted throughout the day. Reform Party candidate Lee Jun-seok, for his part, continued his engagement with young voters. Earlier in the day, Lee hosted a rally along the Gyeonggi Line Forest Park in Mapogu district, reaching out to white-collar workers and college students. He then made his way to popular university hangouts, including Shinchon in Seodaemungu district and Daeangno in Jongno-gu district. Public polls show his support base is largely made up of voters in their 20s. Now, Lee also reiterated his words of regret for crude language during the final presidential debate earlier this week. Findings for the month of April show an on-month slump in all three major economic indicators of industrial output, retail sales and facility investment. Our Shin Se-byuk covers these findings.
South Korea's industrial activity weakened in April, with production, consumption and investment all declining under the weight of U.S. tariffs and sluggish domestic demand. Data released Friday by Statistics Korea shows overall industrial production dropped 0.8% from March, reversing a previous upward trend. Output fell across major sectors, including public administration, manufacturing, services, and construction. Mining and manufacturing production was down 0.9%, led by declines in automobiles and semiconductors. Auto production fell 4.2%, the steepest drop since last November, while chip output dipped nearly 3%. April's figures are seen as the first clear reflection of Washington's newly imposed tariff barriers on Korean exports. Hyundai Motor Group's full-scale launch of production at its Georgia-based Metaplant America factory is also believed to have contributed to the drop in domestic manufacturing. Consumer activity showed continued weakness. Service output edged down 0.1% as gains in retail were offset by declines in professional, scientific, and financial services. Retail sales, a key gauge of goods consumption, slid by 0.9%, with purchases falling across all categories, including clothing, durable goods, and non-durable items. It marked the second straight month of decline following a 1% drop in March. Facility investment also fell for a second month, down 0.4% on month. An expert warned that the worst may still lie ahead as the U.S. tariffs only started to take effect in April and their full impact is still unfolding.
Whether it's manufacturing, consumption, or investment, the overall trend is gradually deteriorating. As the impact of U.S. tariffs starts to fully take hold in the coming months, the numbers could get even worse.
신세벽, Arirang News.
One day after a U.S. trade court ruled against the Trump administration's reciprocal tariffs, an appeals court announced that these import duties can remain in place for now. Our Kim Jung-sil explains.
A U.S. appeals court has allowed President Trump's trade tariffs to stay in place for now by putting a temporary hold on a lower court's decision to block them. This puts on hold Wednesday's ruling by the U.S. Court of International Trade, which said Trump had gone beyond his legal powers in imposing sweeping tariffs on imports under an emergency powers law. The law known as the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, says the president may use its powers only to address unusual and extraordinary national security threats. The court said IEEPA does not give the president full control over trade policy. But on Thursday, the appeals court said that decision would not be enforced while judges review the case. It gave the plaintiffs until June 5th to file their response. Also on Thursday, a federal judge in Washington, D.C. issued a separate ruling finding parts of Trump's tariff policy unlawful. The judge wrote that the IEEPA does not enable the president to unilaterally impose, revoke, pause, reinstate, and adjust tariffs to reorder the global economy. Earlier that day, the White House defended the tariffs, saying they're necessary to protect American industries.
President Trump is in the process of rebalancing America's trading agreements with the entire world, bringing tens of billions of dollars in tariff revenues to our country, and finally ending the United States of America from being ripped off.
With legal challenges mounting, the future of the tariffs remains uncertain. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
And amid the legal battle over tariffs in the U.S., on Korea's southern island of Jeju, experts from American think tanks touched upon the repercussions of Mr. Trump's tariff policy on businesses. Our foreign affairs correspondent Pyongyang covers their thoughts.
Experts are now warning that U.S. President Donald Trump's economic policies could have conflicting consequences that do not necessarily promote economic growth or increase productivity in the country's economy. Speaking on Thursday at an international peace forum held on Jeju Island, Jeffrey Schott, a senior fellow from Peterson Institute for International Economics, said uncertainty about the size and duration of tariffs will discourage or delay investment decisions.
And so the climate is even more uncertain, and uncertainty is a tax on doing business. That's a lesson in economics that I think the Trump administration is only now beginning to learn.
South Korea, which faces 25% U.S. reciprocal tariffs, has been seeking a trade deal with the Trump administration before the July 8th deadline, when the 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs is lifted. Scott Snyder, the head of the Korea Economic Institute of America, who's also at the Jeju Forum, explained there will be a series of deals, adding that although the current focus is on tariffs, there will be another negotiation on security.
I would say deal by deal. Deal by deal. And I think that is going to go on maybe for the entire Trump administration. New things will pop up. They will require negotiation. And so I think that's what will happen, and I think it will be ongoing. It will be stressful. But I think that until both sides come to a place where they're satisfied with everything, President Trump's style is to want to make deals. But I don't believe that it's going to be one big, beautiful deal.
He suggested it would be important for the Korean government to have negotiation strategies to make sure that what Trump is trying to do is perceived as too costly. He also noted that shipbuilding is clearly an area where South Korea has a set of technologies that the U.S. is in need of. Amid more uncertainty over Trump's tariff policies, especially following the latest decision from the U.S. Trade Court, eyes are now on how the trade negotiations between Seoul and Washington will play out. 배은지, Arirang News, Jeju.
In other news, Israel has accepted a new U.S. proposed temporary truce with Hamas. According to the White House on Thursday, Israel has signed on a 60-day truce drafted by the U.S. The deal calls for the release of 10 living and 18 deceased Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian detainees and increased humanitarian aid into Gaza. Hamas, however, has reportedly shared reservations, claiming the deal fails to address key matters, such as a permanent end to Israel's counter-offensive. A multinational team, including South Korea and the U.S., to monitor sanctions against North Korea has made public its first report on the collaboration between North Korea and Russia, revealing the latter's reward to the regime for its aid of the war against Ukraine. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung has details.
North Korea has provided enough heavy artillery to Russia for 3 brigades, while Russia offered air defense systems to the North in return. This from the very first report by the Multilateral Sanctions Monitoring Team released on Thursday. The team serves as an alternative framework to the UN panel of experts on North Korean sanctions monitoring, after it was disbanded in March 2024 due to Russia's veto. The inaugural report by 11 participating states focused on the illegal military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow. The North has supplied Russia with over 20,000 containers worth of artillery shells and related materials since September 2023. Around 9 million artillery and rocket shells were transferred to Russia over 49 cargo shipments last year. And so were more than 100 ballistic missiles, over 200 heavy artillery pieces, as well as anti-tank missiles and rockets. Furthermore, 8,000 North Korean laborers were dispatched to Russia last year, and several thousand more are planned to be sent in the first half of this year. Russia, meanwhile, has transferred at least 1 Panzer-class combat vehicle, along with electronic warfare jamming devices since last November. Through a joint statement, the team urged the North to engage in meaningful diplomacy and said it will continue to monitor the implementation of UN Security Council resolutions on the North. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
A Navy P-3CK maritime patrol aircraft crashed on a mountain in Pohang, Gyeongsang-Bukdo Province Thursday afternoon. All 4 Navy officers on board were killed. Authorities say there had been normal communication between the aircraft and the control tower up until 1 minute before the fatal crash, and that there had been no emergency indication. The cockpit voice recorder has been retrieved, and authorities believe the data within may offer insight into the cause of the crash. An investigation has been launched, and in the meantime, all P-3 patrol aircraft operations have been suspended. Up next, we show you how friendship transcends national boundaries and stands the test of time to allow for rich cultural exchanges, as witnessed at a museum in Massachusetts. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin has the story.
Founded in 1799, the Peabody Essex Museum in Salem, Massachusetts, is the oldest continuously operating museum in the United States. It's also the first American museum to purposefully collect Korean art. This month, the museum reopened its newly expanded and more diverse Korea Gallery, named after Yoo Gil-jun, a pioneering Korean scholar and politician.
Our relationship with Korea is really based on this diplomatic kind of relationship, as well as cultural exchange. We do believe that Yoo Gil-jun was the first international student to be in the United States.
Yoo arrived in America in 1883 as part of Korea's very first diplomatic delegation to the U.S. During his stay in Salem, he developed a close friendship with Edward Sylvester Morse, then director of the Peabody Academy of Science, Pam's predecessor. Yoo later donated his personal belongings, and Morse would go on to acquire over 200 Korean items, laying the foundation for what is now Pam's Korea Gallery. The gallery focuses on Korean art from the early 19th to the 20th centuries. The development was led by Dr. Jiyeon Kim, who spent 2 years researching, curating, and designing the gallery.
This is the period that Korea first opened this door to a wider world. It is not just the story of Yoo Gil-jun and the elite, and also our gallery and our collection contains the lives of so many people who lived that very pivotal period.
Nearly 100 Korean art and everyday objects are on display. Among the highlights are an 8-panel folding screen from the early 1800s depicting a grand royal banquet during the Joseon dynasty, meticulously conserved in Korea. This is a newly unveiled family picture of Lee Bum-jin, a Korean diplomat in Washington, D.C., who befriended Edwin Vernon Morgan, one of the first American diplomats posted to Korea. These traditional instruments, senghwang and 장구, were played at the 1893 Chicago World's Fair.
What we aim to do at the museum is, to create an environment and an experience in which people can become more curious about, the larger world, their place in it, seeing what we do share, and really what makes something individual and distinctive.
At the same time, the gallery offers visitors a deeper window into Korea.
Give this very valuable opportunity to people who know Korea only through K-pop and popular culture, and give them more insight about the history, where this originated from.
Some friendships grow stronger over time. The bond between Yoo Gil-jun and Edward Sylvester Morse has endured for well over a century, evolving into this one-of-a-kind cultural exchange between their countries. 송유진, Arirang News.
You should prepare for a big daily temperature difference for the next few days. It felt hotter in the middle of the day than yesterday. Today's daytime temperature in Seoul soared up to 29 degrees Celsius, about 2 degrees higher than yesterday. Temperatures will stay very similar to today throughout this weekend. It will be mostly sunny on the weekend without any rain or showers. However, the temperatures in the inland areas will get as hot as around 30 degrees. In addition, the ultraviolet index will soar from high to very high across the country. It is recommended that people stay indoors or stay in the shade while enjoying outdoor activities. Tomorrow, Seoul and Jeju will start off at 16 degrees, Chuncheon and Gyeongju at 10 degrees. Highs will move up to nearly 30 degrees in most areas. On the day of the election, the sky will be cloudy across the country. It is expected to rain only in Gyeongsangnam-do province and Jeju Island. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our panel session.
How to survive in Korea. Weddings. Step 0. Attire. As a guest, dress formal to business casual. Avoid wearing all white, shorts or going topless. Step 1. Arrival time. Arrive 30 minutes prior to the wedding ceremony. Too many cars, too many halls, too many people. There are many twists and turns. Take pictures and shake hands. And write your name vertically, not horizontally, in the guest book. Step 2. Or shibor. 50,000 won, 100,000 won, 150,000 won. Cash gifts are given in these units. Decide on the amount based on your relationship. Write your name vertically on the envelope. Step 3. Wedding etiquette. Fill up the front row. Guests have 3 duties to fulfill: clapping, cheering, and taking pictures. Step 4. Dining. Take off your jacket. This will be your seat from now on. Start with the not your everyday delicacies. Galbijjim. Yes. Bosa. Yes. Chili shrimps. Definitely yes. Kimbap. Yeah. Only if you can't live without it. No need to pile up food. You have more than one opportunity. Did you survive the wedding? Wait, did someone catch your eye? What are you waiting for? You're looking fine today.
Your gateway to Korea, Simply K-pop. Hello, I'm your Simply K-pop MC Taewi of AB6. 반갑습니다.
And your special Simply MC for today. Hello, I'm actress Hwang Ji-young. This week's Simply K-pop.
Gateway to Korea, don't miss out.
An American coffee house chain here in South Korea halts an in-house Call My Name service in light of the presidential election, while female voters reportedly face a familiar election campaign reality. Do stay with us. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective. It's Friday, May 30th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. It's that time of the week during which we delve into a number of stories here that made international headlines, and today they are all related to the election. For more on this, I have Fabian Kretschmer with German news agency DPA here in the studio. Fabian, it's great to have you here.
Nice to be here.
I also have writer Colin Marshall with the pundit's take on today's topic. Colin, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Right, Fabian, we will start with you. So as I mentioned in this short clip ahead of our talk, Starbucks here in South Korea has been making international headlines for a service that it runs that some customers have been using to make political statements. Do tell us more.
Yeah, first I should explain this service. I mean, for viewers who are based in South Korea, I mean, probably they would know because Starbucks is so popular here. It's basically South Korea is the third biggest market for Starbucks. Yeah, so if you go to Starbucks, you order a coffee. Usually you don't get a number, but they make it more personal. You can choose a name that you can also get written on your coffee cup. And for example, the barista would call out your name, or now it's displayed in, on an LED display. And you know, people have been making fun names or would use the name of their K-pop singer that they like. And it became kind of a joke. But now during this election campaign, people have been also using political slogans. For example, they would take a candidate name and then make a statement, and some really stark statements. One was, for example, arrest Jun-seok or Lee Jae-myung is a spy. And when those those customers, actually, they made photos of it, they posted it on social media, it went viral, and then, yeah, Starbucks got cold feet and they said, wow, this is not political neutral. We have to kind of end this. And what they did is they banned customers from using the names of candidates, all the leading candidates. And yeah, ironically, for example, if you share accidentally the same name as one of the leading candidates, then what do? You cannot use your own name. But yeah, that shows you how sensitive it is if you use political statements within a corporate setting.
Right, indeed. Colin, all this being said, do you suppose the practice of political neutrality here in South Korea among corporations or celebrities, do you suppose it's more pronounced?
It's more pronounced than in the United States, where I'm from, certainly. Although in the U.S., if you think about it, or if you have experience there, typically business owners are assumed to side with the Republican Party, the more conservative party, and celebrities to side with the Democratic Party, the more liberal one. And so there are exceptions, but they'll let you know. You know, there are high-profile figures who, whether they be business owners who are Democratic or celebrities who are Republican, they don't really make a big secret of it. And sometimes they're donors, and people know, and it's part of their image. Here in Korea, I was just reading the new edition of Yoonhee Hong's book, The Birth of Korean Cool, and she writes about how in Korea, celebrities, there are no celebrity like bad boys. No, if you're rebellious, you're really not in any real sense rebellious. Nobody's famous and actually rebelling against some social norm at the same time in a serious way. And so I think that's part of this whole need to preserve the image in Korea, to preserve not just a politically neutral image, but a sort of broad-based image where you don't want to alienate your audience. And airing a political opinion of any kind, in most cases, is seen to be something that will alienate your audience in a way that could be fatal to your career. Whether that happens at practice or not is another story, but sometimes, as we saw a few months ago with that trot singer who made an instant message comment to someone else saying that he wasn't going to comment publicly on the Jun-seok martial law contretemps, he got in trouble for that, for saying privately that he wasn't going to say anything. So when consensus goes a certain way in society, it can be dangerous to be seen as being deliberately silent. And a little bit of that happened with the whole Park Geun-hye protests in 2016 as well. So for the most part, I think celebrities and businesses want to stay on the fence or not really put down a flag on either side. But sometimes when it comes down to it, you know, public sentiment wants you to say something, and then you have to.
Right, and staying with this, Fabian, how do you care to explain South Korea's emphasis on political neutrality for the corporate and celebrity world?
Well, I can try to explain it, but to be honest, I think some aspects are also quite strange to me, which I also don't fully understand. But I would say what contributes to it is that South Korea, in the end, is a polarized society when it comes to political views. I mean, you can debate about it, but in the end, I would say, yeah, it's quite polarized. And secondly, public debates can get heated very easily. And yeah, when, for example, there's an election season, even K-pop stars, when they go out, have some photo shooting, they will also wear neutral colors. They would not want to wear, for example, strong red, strong blue colors that are linked to political parties. And the same goes for corporates. And, you know, for example, companies, it's the same everywhere. They can make political statements, but only with some rationale behind it. And that's always, will it bring profit or not? I mean, I say it a little bit in a cynical way, but I've been seeing in Europe companies making statements or posting rainbow flags and for Pride Month, so basically promoting minority rights. But at the same time, the same company would not do that in, let's say, more conservative Muslim countries. So it is the point is always, could it scare off customers or not? And I think here both celebrities and companies are very cautious because they might lose basically half of the population if they side with the wrong side. I mean, I'm simplifying, but I think that's basically the point.
Right, something to think about. Meanwhile, Colin, as we end 2 days of early voting today and look ahead to the actual election day on June 3rd, the New York Times published an interesting article about Korea's female voters and the dilemma they face. Could you walk us through the gist of that particular article and then include your thoughts on it?
The idea there is that there's no major candidate in this election catering to women, catering to female voters. And one reason could be, or this is one analysis of that dynamic, is that many women are not inclined to vote for 국민의힘 with Kim Moon-soo running. And the other party, 더불어민주당, with Lee Jae-myung, is sort of acting as if they've got women's votes in the bag anyway and don't need to compete for them. And so women get a bit lost as a group of voters being appealed to in this election. Now, I do find it a bit bothersome to see women regarded as a single block in politics, because I think, as we know, women anywhere, or Korean women specifically, it's not like they all agree on everything politically. And I think we can see that in just the generational difference alone. You know, is a 65-year-old woman going to agree on politics with a 25-year-old woman enough that we can consider them to be, oh, here are the women and here are how they are voting? I don't think so. But in this case, many times, certain issues get brought forth as issues that are particularly relevant to women, particularly relevant to female voters. In the past, for example, public safety has been one. And I would say it's slightly disingenuous to frame that as a women's issue alone, considering, I think I'm right in saying, in South Korea and most societies, violent death statistically tends to happen to men more often. Now, what I think we see there is not the fact that, oh, we need a candidate to say somebody needs to protect the men. No, that's not that. Doesn't need to be a men's party looking out for men's physical safety, but that public safety, for example, is an issue that touches everyone, and a society either has a high level of safety or does not. And so sometimes breaking what is actually a problem or a condition that affects everybody into a condition that seems to affect only part of the population is a bit disingenuous. But it's true, nobody is going for the women's vote specifically in this election. That's a fair point, but it's just sort of how this election shaped up, and the issues in play are not necessarily gender charged in a way that's going to decide the election.
And for the sake of comparison, Fabien, what can you tell us about the campaign pledges to promote gender equality in elections elsewhere, like beyond national borders?
Yeah, when I look at Europe, I mean, of course, it's not a unified bloc. I mean, each country is a little bit different. But let me take Germany, for example. Gender topics are quite important, but I think not within the top 3 agenda. I think there's still a big male view on politics, and sometimes also gender topics get, you know, a little bit on the sideline, and that is unfortunate. But yeah, so one comparison is actually that both in Europe and in South Korea, gender topics can be controversial. I mean, in Germany, there's also a big fight for like how to solve the gender pay gap, meaning that women still earn less than men, even though they do the same job. How to promote more women among CEOs, for example, in the high-level jobs. Do you need a quota or not? That is highly debated. How do you support single mothers, for example? I mean, many of those questions, public safety, etc. But I would say that in general, most European countries are more progressive when it comes to gender topics. That is my opinion. I'm quite shocked when I see that leading presidential candidates here, or especially one in South South Korea can make almost misogynist comments. And I mean, if you say that in Europe, I would say that puts you into the really fringe of the political spectrum. And I think, that being feminist is considered by some of something shameful also. I mean, that is something of a past for most European countries, and I'm quite happy about that.
Right. Fabien, keeping in mind the social challenges faced by women here in South Korea, what would you say is the importance of election pledges aimed at promoting women's welfare in the country?
Yeah, I must say it would be very important, but I'm quite disappointed that it's not on the agenda so much. I mean, first of all, we don't have a female presidential candidate. I mean, South Korea actually, to be fair, had a female president before with Park Geun-hye. I mean, I don't think that her gender played a big role in why she was voted for, but I mean, still, it's an achievement that not many countries have achieved so far. But yeah, this time, for example, when you look at the pledges of the candidates, they usually give out like their 10 most important topics, and then women topics are not featured prominently, and I see mostly one candidate who's talking very openly about it. The others treat it more as a minor topic. I think there's more to be done, because if you look at all the indicators and statistics, I think Korea is still quite a patriarchy, and I think women's rights need to be promoted more. I think there's no equality, I mean, in my personal opinion, so I hope that actually the next president will have that in mind.
Right, fingers crossed for that. Colin, as Fabien mentioned, this particular presidential election, it is the first to see no female contender for the first time in some 18 years. What are your thoughts on the current rate of female women participation in Korean politics?
Yes, it's been how to put it? We've had a stretch here in Korea where there have been female candidates, and suddenly it's surprising to a lot of people that there is not one in the presidential race. Although, I myself wonder, I'm not sure how many to expect there to be. In my mind, should I be thinking if there are 8 presidential candidates, should 4 be women? Should 3? Should 2? Should 7 be women? I'm not sure. It's tough to know what the standard should be. In all fields of human endeavor, you're not going to see the population reflected perfectly. That's just the nature of specialization, and I think many women who don't want to participate in Korean politics are perhaps wise not to want to participate in Korean politics. But that aside, yes, it's an election that also happens with the presidency of Park Geun-hye in memory. Of course, as Fabien mentioned, was the first female president of South Korea. And to my mind, I can't vote here in Korea yet. When I get my citizenship, I will. But at that time when she was elected, I would have said that voting for her because she was a woman was not necessarily a bad reason. Because if you bring in the first female president, then you're you have the sort of mission accomplished, and then the next female candidate does not have the burden of being the first female president or not. The election is not burdened with this idea, are we going to allow in female presidents or aren't we? That's decided. You've had one, and so then that normalizes, shall we say, the next one to come along. But of course, that president was Park Geun-hye, and to many Koreans, that was unfortunate that she was the one to make that mark. And as well, you see these analyses that it could be because of Park Geun-hye's sort of dubious legacy, whether it makes the voters or female politicians themselves a little hesitant about it, that could be in play. And as well, this particular presidential election was sort of unforeseen. It happened quickly, and the candidate field wasn't necessarily, prepared to run for president. And so, there are some thoughts that the parties didn't really send their best this time around. It's who could run did run, and perhaps it isn't the right time, especially with parties being in a bit of a state of civil war among themselves. It isn't the right time for a female candidate, but I don't think we've seen the last of female presidential candidates either in Korea.
Right, for sure. Fabien, I'm sure you've been actively covering the election campaign here in the country and the rallies. Beyond the pledges made by the presidential contenders, is there any aspect of the campaigning here in the country that caught your attention?
Yeah, in general, what I do like about South Korean democracy, it is something that you really experience with all your senses. If I compare that to my home country, Germany, politics can feel sometimes a bit dry, but here when it's election season, I mean, you go to the street, you have pickup trucks with, you know, blasting loudspeakers and, you know, blasting the slogans. You go to the conservative demonstrations. As a reporter, you always get a lot of choco pies and like older people who wish you well. Then you go to the leftist NGOs demonstrating, and they are singing guitar songs. And it is, I mean, I think it's just a very vivid democracy, and it is something that is also very emotional, a lot of drama. Of course, not without flaws. I mean, sometimes being too emotional also has some drawbacks, but in general, yeah, I do like that. And yeah, maybe let me add one thing which caught my attention this time. I would say foreign policy was really not so prominent, and I think that could, in the end, backfire a bit. I think in Korea, sometimes the view is quite introverted, and there's not enough awareness to some degree that, you know, all the conflicts that we have, they are linked, and that they will have also consequences for Korea. So sometimes I wish that also the presidential candidates would have a more clear vision for foreign policy. That is only my opinion. Other than that, I would say compared to the last election, that I covered, that was pre-COVID. I would say this time feels a little less passionate actually than before. But let's see how the voter turnout will be. I mean, now it looks that it could be high, but let's see.
Right, for sure. Colin, young celebrities here in the country often choose to certify, if you will, their exercise of civic duty by sharing or posting pictures online after casting their ballots. Do you suppose this practice in itself serves to perhaps encourage other young voters to partake in their civic duty?
Yes, it couldn't hurt. There is this idea in Korea of the 인증 shot, the shot that proves you've done something, whether you've gone to some place like a fancy cafe, or you've eaten something that's hard to get, or you've done something somewhat notable. You know, you need the 인증 shot to prove it, or you've met somebody famous. So that idea, in some ways, has been ported over, has been transplanted to the democratic process in this case. And of course, there's this idea that, you know, if you do something notable, you take a picture of yourself, you take a selfie. And in fact, I was just reading today a book by an American journalist who was talking about voting in the 2016 election and taking her selfie afterward and finding that the church where she voted, in the US, we often vote in places like churches or garage-looking, I mean, they're not necessarily picturesque sites. So she went to go find a park and took her photo there as if she had voted in the park, and her friends called her out on it like, that doesn't look like a polling place. But they do it in the US too. Here, there's been a bit of a twist on it in this election. Not just posting your selka, but there are these little sheets that have been distributed or people have been making with different cartoon characters or jokes or some kind of pun, and a space to put down a stamp when you vote. Looks a little bit like a peace sign, sort of askew, and there's always a place to it's carefully designed to give you a space, whether it's on the character's face or on a TV they're watching, to stamp there. And then you can take the shot of that, and then you can post it or hold it up, take a selfie. And it seems like people are having fun with it. As you say, the voting has already begun, and presumably a lot more of that is going to happen next week during the actual election. But I think whether in Korea or in the US, there's a sort of, we're all humans, we are very monkey see, monkey do, and in the case of Korea, social media is an even more powerful force than it is in the United States. And so once you get the voting going on social media, yes, you see your friends doing it. You kind of want to do it too. You want to prove you also did it. You want to post your 인증 shot. But as well, you have the power of celebrity and the power of idols doing it. And there are these sheets, there are special editions being actually distributed by the fan bases of, for example, BTS and their army, the BTS army. Although, as I've heard, it's actually just BTS army without the article. But in any case, the army has their own sheets, and you know, if some of them do something, the rest want to. And you know, celebrities here have very mobilizable fan bases. So in this case, it's an integration of an old process, voting, although not that old here, with a sort of celebrity culture that's also developed. So I think it is getting out the vote, and you know, I don't think any of us will be surprised by who younger people vote for, voting being very generationally based here. But it is interesting to see that each election, this sort of thing takes a slightly different form. And using pieces of paper seems actually kind of old school. I appreciate it.
Right. Fabian, come June 4th, South Korea will have a new administration taking the top office, who will be sharing its economic and hopefully foreign policy agendas, of course. That being said, if you were able to share your humble words of advice to the new administration. What would be your words of advice to the administration as we seek a path forward?
That's a big challenge. I'm not good at giving advice, but I mean, I will give some humble words. I mean, yes, what we've seen in the last weeks and months, it was a big, challenging time for South Korean democracy. And what I see among, especially young peers in Korea, that there has been a slight disillusionment also with democracy. I think the next president has the big task of showing that he's not driven by self-interest, but that he cares about the problems of the common people, which is, of course, a feature that every president should fulfill. But I mean, right now, South Korea is really at a turning point. I mean, it has achieved so much, but we could see that democracy is precarious. Achievements are not guaranteed forever. We don't only see that in South Korea, but in other Western countries as well. And I really hope that the next president will be successful, because the more successful democratic presidents will be, that will also have a soft power, an attractiveness that goes over beyond South Korea. And I think that is, in those really uncertain times, is very important, also from a global perspective. So I wish the next president well.
Right. All right. That's all the time we have. I'm sure hopefully they'll take your words into consideration after June 4th or on June 4th. Fabian, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. And Colin, as always, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right. On that note, we end this week's editions of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching. Have a great weekend.